A month or so ago, I would have a brief real-side experience view of a particular species. Where they were positioned in creation wasn't disclosed, but just as it is on Earth, where we have variety of human expression, the different races, colour, variation in facial structure, etc., so it was with this species. Only their variation was in regards to more animal-like features, for indeed they all were bipedal, but were as though two-legged felines, canines, lizards, and so forth. It seemed to be an overall species that were, however, united, a social structure that served as a benefit for all, and with no hint or indication of an overruling, dominating species, such as is the case with humans and their dark force reptilian overlords, either existing and operating unseen or overtly controlling, as though a species that had avoided the controlling clutches of the dark forces in all their forms, and seemingly untouched by the war and strife that predominates this simulator, a rarity to be sure in this particular creational realm. I would be afforded but a brief view of this species. Very little could be discerned as to the extent, if any, of their technology or way of life. Just a scene of the various bipedal animal body forms, almost as though gathered together for a photograph, say. I would record the scene, however, write it down, and leave it to one side for future reference. As often can be the case, experiences can come in sequences that span weeks, months, even years, and there can be various periods of time elapsing between each part. And then comes the moment where we can see how certain real-side experiences link together, and what was a brief random scene can make more sense in light of further experiences related to them. This would indeed be the case. I will mention briefly the real-side experience I shared several months ago, where I was shown that due to certain ideas that a group of humans had agreed with, had latched onto, incorporated into their consciousness, and enhanced with emotion, so they were effecting for themselves future lifetime positions that reflected these ideas. For this group of humans had a certain emotional attachment fixation with particular expressions of body forms as portrayed in movies, animations, etc., and a body form fixation or infatuation is an emotional attachment with the idea that affects the form, and just as with any idea, as we attach to it, as it becomes a part of the consciousness will generate the simulation and experience of the ideas we have installed within it. And so it is that if we are taken by certain movie themes, if we are unconscious personal self-immersed individuals, and are resigned then to be the effects of our agreements and attachments, very likely we will be projecting ourselves into future creational positions, reflecting the themes that have captivated us through the movies. The same can hold true for the various exotic body forms as portrayed in the movies, and with this particular group of humans, that they had fixated upon particular expressions along the lines of a wolf, cat-like bipedal walking body types. So they had forged their next physical level position in a world where this type of body form resided. And indeed, was I shown the view of these humans transitioning from the physical, and as though going through a body form selection process, assuming bipedal cat, wolf, lizard-like forms, before eventually being positioned in the physical level area of creation, where such a world that comprised of these kind of body forms resided. I mention this experience also, for as was revealed in the initial brief scene, such a world does exist, and with the very body forms these humans were so captivated by. The chances are then that the position these humans were destined for, through their agreements and attachments, very possibly would be that very world, or one of a similar nature. For in a cause and effect creation, we always are the deciders of what we experience. Every thought and emotion, every idea, be it those we dislike or adore, all are being a consciousness inserted and will effect their nature. But anyway, in this recent real side experience, I would find myself in the presence of a former school colleague, one that I am no longer in association with, but a form that frequents my real side experiences relatively regularly, as I have shared over the years, an individual by the name of Keith. Though real awareness impressions have revealed that this is in fact a form assumed by a real guide, and this would be the case here also. We both would be operating within a particular position or area of creation. We both had simulated forms that were interjected into a real side creation, as opposed to just observing what's taking place from the real awareness aside from creation position. For if we intend to impact the real side simulated situations in any way, or share these references, we need to present a simulated presence by which we can do so, that we are presenting a form that others can engage with. For it is so that the simulated, created personal self needs be approached and encouraged to get on board with whatever we are proposing, be it agreements we are trying to secure that will be of a benefit, or affording these pertaining references that they have the opportunity to recognize their real awareness, true being selves, etc. For most will be locked into the personal self, not recognizing of the real awareness, and so it is the personal self we must engage with as it expresses multi-dimensionally, and then as agreements are secured and intents established, so this will filter through to the physical and motivate behavior and action there. For indeed, everything starts on the real side, and once situations are moulded there, so the physical level will follow, though it will take the moments that it will. And so, where the guide and I were positioned in creation, operated within a particular frequency that actually was rather detrimental to any other body form that wasn't indigenous to this particular creational area. For indeed, every body form is the product of its environment, and perfectly suitable and adapted for it. I am reminded of the movie War of the Worlds, where the aliens, having conquered the Earth, on exiting their craft so they would fall foul to the germs that their body forms were incapable of combating, but that were harmless to the human form, and this would be the invading aliens' undoing. As it transpired, this area of creation we were positioned in was that which incorporated the world of the bipedal animal forms, the brief view I was afforded months ago, as I mentioned at the start. This may explain to an extent as to why their particular area of creation was untouched by the presence of other beings with intentions of invasion or domination. For as I said, it operated within a certain frequency lethal to any species that were not born into it, a frequency that would be detrimental to any technology also that was created beyond the creational area this species resided in. And so it seemed I was on an assignment to engage with these beings, but rather than approach them in my current form, it was considered prudent to do so in a body type that resembled their own. As a very secluded species, due to the frequency that keeps all other beings beyond their creational position at bay, to be confronted by body forms they are unfamiliar with would very likely elicit reaction that wouldn't be very advantageous. For my purpose was to share with these beings these references, but if they became absorbed and wrapped in their created reactions, whatever they might be, chances are they wouldn't be in a position to be able to accept what I was sharing. This I have done before, assuming body forms of the species I am engaging with, and for this very purpose. Sometimes the target species will be unaware of my guise, as in this case, or on occasion they will realize or be informed that this is so, and it really is a method then to make them more comfortable. For the best way to create rapport with another is to mimic their actions. To assume the same or similar forms would be along these lines of rapport cultivating. And so I would assume a form that would allow me to blend in. I fail to recall what type it was, feline or canine, etc., but the guide would take a few moments adjusting my form. As I said, we were operating in a particular frequency, and the body form had to be aligned with it, or it would be detrimentally impacted. I had the sense of as though the turning of a dial to get the body form just right, and when satisfactory, so I would infiltrate this society of bipedal animal body forms. Although a real side experience that spanned the hours it did, in actuality I was positioned with the species for a period of many months by my estimation, as I gradually placed myself more so that what I shared would be accepted by the greatest volume of beings. For after all, if one can assume positions of perceived prominence, so their words will carry more weight. As it transpired, this species were technologically orientated, although they kept themselves to themselves, utilizing their technology for the benefit and betterment of their own kind. They had spacecraft capability and would explore their immediate star systems, and indeed, was it considered the height of achievement to become a part of their space exploration team, the species equivalent of NASA, though absent of the deceptions and cover-ups. And so, all those working as a part of their space fleet were afforded the most admiration and acknowledgement from the species. Their words would carry the greatest weight and credibility. Hence why I would spend the several months elevating myself to a prominent position within what would be their version of a space mission control. And from there I had the liberty of sharing these references and would be heard on a global scale. Then it would fall to each individual to decide what they would do with these pertaining references they had received. There was a moment, however, where I had the impression I had reached all I could and felt it prudent to now withdraw. But because of my position, my absence wouldn't go unnoticed. To maintain such a position with their space team, so one had to maintain a certain standard of excellence and execution of duty, and so I decided to perform at a level that would culminate in my expulsion. The personal self alone would have little inkling as to how to assume such a position with this species space team, considering that the technology I would be working with would be somewhat different to that present on Earth. But the real awareness is a part of the ISSS true reality that is through all consciousness. Every consciousness, as it effects into every species and creational position. Every idea available then to the real awareness, which can be drawn upon and utilized, that every situation on the real side can be handled, including the assumption of positions in other species societies, and the utilizing of their technology, etc. Before my departure, not only had I shared these references to the species overall, but I had made mention of a potential situation that may befall the planet Earth. For as I have shared over the years, there are many potentialities of agreement in human consciousness, where various scenarios in regards to human overall experience can play out. It's all according to which agreement takes prominence and then rolls out on the physical. It's as though all the idea agreements are present and complete, as they will be in actuality, but the physical presents as though a delay factor, due to the additional ideas of time and space. And although then the human movie is complete, the human participants still must sit through it, and should the agreements change, the movie is switched, and only if agreement is maintained will the movie, although complete in reality, reach its culmination. One of the human movie overall experience potentialities is that of a global, dark force instigated catastrophe of various degrees of severity. During this experience, so were my impressions as to the current agreement that was prominent with human consciousness, that which would effect not only a dark force orchestrated global cataclysm, but a complete extinction event, and to the extent that even the dark forces would withdraw from the planet and abandon it. It was decided then that rather than just leave the Earth as a lifeless planet, should this particular potentiality become so, that it would make sense for this species I had infiltrated to in fact colonize the Earth. The impressions were that most of this species had been receptive to the opportunity of the ears and embracing of their awareness processes, and were keen to travel the stars to share the ears with other species also. Interestingly, although other species could not infringe on their creational area due to the frequency issues, it appeared they had the ability to make adjustments to not only the frequencies of their ships, but of their body forms, that they could as though dial down their own particular frequency and enter any area of creation they chose without impacting it detrimentally due to the usual frequency they operated as. And the idea was then to establish many bases of operation by which they could reach other species and worlds, and the Earth, soon to be barren, was considered a key location. Perhaps it was located in an area where there are many wormholes that afford easy access to other creational positions, for example. For I have heard mention of the Earth being a prime position for this very reason. And so, before I departed, I would observe the species deploying a fleet of craft, their particular design having the appearance of flat mechanical slabs, vast in size, and as they left their own system, as they made the necessary frequency adjustments, they set a course for Earth, an Earth that currently was as it is now, but with this particular agreement of view and potentiality would shortly be decimated. My view would switch, and now I was relocated on the planet Earth, at a moment before the cataclysm hadn't as yet taken place, but in my human form. The species I had been engaging with had successfully reached the Earth. They had arrived undetected and had established a community on the planet's surface. The community went as unnoticed as the arrival of their fleet, due to the fact that they had shifted the vibration of their ships, themselves, and the commune they had constructed. That although it still operated within the physical level, it was just beyond the perceptual and detectable range of human sight and any technology. As I said, they seemed to have this ability as a species, to alter their frequency and vibration at will, a particular consciousness-developed skill, a little like how different radio broadcasts can share the same space as they operate at different frequencies. So it is with the dimensions, all in actuality occupying the same space, but removed from each other due to a vibrational differentiation. The idea was that they were establishing themselves on Earth prior to the cataclysm that was to take place, but to remain unnoticed by occupying a vibrational position beyond detectable range. And when the global event occurred, as this particular agreement potentiality would play out with a complete annihilation of all Earth-based species, and following from that would the dark forces responsible withdraw and abandon the planet. So after a certain period of time would this species emerge from their vibrational concealment and utilize the Earth as a convenient base of operations, a prime location to launch various missions from, the overall objective being the sharing of the ears to all species they could engage with, etc. And so I would find myself in the company of this species and within their commune in my human form, as by now they had determined and become familiar with the human species that existed on the planet Earth, at least for the time being, and were comfortable with such body types. I would spend some time with them, sharing information about how creation works, its cause and effect nature, revealing that the humans were set to be eradicated through agreements in their consciousness which effected such to be, and so forth, that although they, their commune, and their ships, still in a geostationary orbit, were beyond the detectable range of human technology, and indeed the human eye, we had to account for the greater technology of the dark force reptilians, and so it was prudent to make further adjustments to the frequency they were operating as, to ensure they were not detected by the dark forces until the dark forces abandoned the planet after it was rendered extinct of all life. The experience would end there. As I said, this was but a potentiality, an agreement that is among others present in overall human consciousness. And if this situation I have shared comes to pass, depends on if the agreement that will effect it is maintained in its prominence over all others. If indeed the human race isn't destroyed, the animal-like species will not choose to take possession of the abandoned Earth, but nevertheless, regardless, I still would have spent the months I had assuming my position in their society, sharing these references that most of them were receptive to, and their intent to launch their fleet into space, to reach out to other planets and body types, to promote the guides, real awareness, and the opportunity of the true reality remains unchanged.
Okay, amazing, Kevin. Yeah, that's a lot. The little humans here, they've got a lot to figure out, don't they? All of us do, yes. Just terrific. Thank you so much, Kevin. Yeah. What else can I say? It's just, wow. Thank you.
And so, sing the new you song. It is your connection to the true reality, the all is, that the real you, your real awareness, is a part of. New